help. I actually need some help with this. Well, I need some help generally, yeah, we know that. But what I've got here is some things in this bag that I would love us to think through about people that help us. And I've got the first one, and I'm wondering if I might invite, not a child for this one, but somebody who may have worn something like this before. If I hold this up, does anybody recognise this? If you don't know, there's a certain member of the church, quite a new member of the church actually, only been around warning a little while, who used to wear one of these. Keith, do you think I might indulge you by standing at the front? I've got a feeling you're going to tell me it's not quite like the one you used. No, it's definitely not right. You could have provided me one, but it wouldn't be quite as funny as that. So if you just stand over there, is that okay? Because we're going to get some other things. We're thinking about people that help us. Who would we go? What would we go to if we had a problem? We go to a policeman, and we'd say, help with my. What would we help with? Help. Help. You lost what? If you're lost. That's right. You go to a policeman, and Keith knows all about that. Now, children, I wonder whether George, do you want to come out here? What else have we got? Let's have a look. George, can I give you this? In fact, no, I'll give you this one. Here we are. Can you take that? Come and stand at the front here. You stand next to. We've got them. You have to slide along a little bit, Keith, so we're not in the way of the screen. That's fantastic. So we've got the fire. We've got the police service. Now we've got George. Can you turn it down so we can see what's on the front? What does that say? First aid. That's right. So George is. Well, he's actually a member of the ambulance service, as we can see. So if you need an ambulance, you can call on George. Right. Who else? I'm looking at for somebody else here. I think it might have to be. Well, who can it be? Who can fit this? Let's see about who can fit that. What's that? Traffic. You could be a traffic warden. Here we are. I'll add this in as well. Right. Who's he going to be? Come on, Ollie. You know you want to. Right. I'm not quite sure that your muscular body is going to fit into that.
Just the jump.
It's the jump. That is going to be quite small, I think. But that might be quite funny. Right. So this is Ollie. Again, you'll have to stand around the way. So, if your car breaks down, you call the AA man, don't you? There he is. We've got two more. Right. Someone's just got to come and hold this. Right. What do we think this is going to be? Come on, Sam. You come out here. Now, you wouldn't think of it, but Sam is actually an expert in mountain rescue. Look at him. Imagine you were stuck up Scarfell Pike. Wouldn't you want to see this man up there? He's right there. Now they've got one more, and I'm slightly scraping the barrel a bit here. So RNLI, you're having trouble at sea, okay? What do you need? You need somebody to turn up with armbands on them. Do you think one of these little girls on? Sophie, do you want to put these on? Do you have any clue what they're on? Right, Sophie, here you go. Do you want to put those on? Possibly not. There we are. So imagine you're there, you're struggling at sea, and this young lady turns up, and she's got her armbands. You think, at last, I'm saved, I'm rescued. Look at this. Well done. Oh, isn't it good? There you are. Do you want to give us a wave? Brilliant. So if you're in trouble and you're not sure where to go, you need to ask a police officer. And if you ask him to say, "Hello, Keith, how are you?" He says, "Hello, hello, hello." Of course he does. And then you're in trouble. You need an ambulance man, and George is your man, and Ollie, your car breaks down, and Ollie's your man, the AA man. You're stuck out in the mountain, and you're going to be rescued by this handsome-looking chap with his daughter, who's also got the armbands. If you're caught out on the water. Can we give a round of applause to these guys? Put the things back on here. Thank you so much. Because we're thinking a little bit about rescue this morning. and this is just by way of introduction, but I wonder whether you recognise who these men are. They are the Chilean miners. Do you remember back in 2010, there was 33 of them caught underground for a couple of months, it was. And there was one man who said, every day we're going to pray. And they basically had this bunch of miners who were quite rough, tough miners. And he said, we're going to pray, the Lord is going to rescue us. And about 2/3 of them said, I want to become a Christian. Thousands of feet underground, a couple of thousand feet underground. And the guy's name was, this guy here, Jose Enriquez. And all 33 were saved. This chap on the left, he's the one that got them praying. And he said this, he said, the true hero is Jesus Christ. Apart from what man may have done, both inside and outside the mine, he's the one who deserves all the honor and the glory. And it's a remarkable story of rescue. And we're going to be thinking about that as we come to think about the account of Moses in a moment. So as I said, we're continuing this little series all through history. I've got this card. If you haven't got a card with the details and dates on, there's some over on the leaflet racks over there. And last week, everybody was here, we looked at, I think there must have only been 3 people, we looked at Noah, the life of Noah together. And, so that's just a card there. I didn't want to put it on because you can see what we saw. And we saw that Noah was a faithful ark builder. He did what God has said, even when it seemed crazy. But more importantly, we saw that God was a faithful promise keeper. And today we're looking at Moses, and I wonder if anybody, perhaps who was born a little earlier than me, recognises this young man. Roger, were you at school with him? No. You weren't. Roger Burns was at school with most people around here, it seems, but he didn't live around here. This is Charlton Heston from a film called The Ten Commandments. Came out in 1956. And it lasted for 3 hours and 40 minutes, which is just about 5 minutes longer than this talk today. So buckle in, everybody. Because the book of the book of Exodus has loads about Moses. Can anyone think of examples of things from Moses' life? We've sung about one of them for starters. If I say the word Moses, what do we think about Moses? There's a book down there with something on it. Don't be shy. Yeah, basket on the river. There's a thing there. Moses and the bulrushes. Yeah. And then we've been thinking about led his people through the sea. Yeah. What else have we got? 10 Commandments, yeah. That was from him, yeah. So there's lots. We've got a lot of the book of Exodus. We see these different things, and we are going to take a little helicopter ride over that, and we're just going to hover on 3 different sections. And the first one we're going to look at is what I've called God makes the first move. And for this, if you remember, we've been reading last time from the Jesus Storybook Bible, and we heard it from our regular church Bible that Janet read to us. But I want to just read one page from here at the moment, as we look at about God making the first move, but it really helps it put it into perspective. So Joseph and his brothers, this is the end of the book of Genesis, they grew old and died, but their children's children stayed on in Egypt, where they'd become a very large family. Later on, a new king began to rule, but this Pharaoh didn't remember Joseph, and he didn't like God's people. He made them into his slaves and beat them and made them work harder and harder. God's people cried out to God to rescue them, and God heard them. He remembered his promise to Abraham. He would look after his people. He would find a way to set them free. One day, Moses was looking after sheep when something caught his eye. A bush was behaving very oddly. It was flickering with flames, but its leaves weren't burning up. He took a closer look. "Moses!" boomed a big voice. Moses leapt back. The bush was talking to him. "I have heard my people's cries," God said. "I've seen their tears, and I've come down to rescue them. Go to Pharaoh and tell him to let my people go free." Moses was afraid, but God said, "I will be with you." When we think about Moses and the burning bush, it is an incredible account, an amazing encounter. And I love when we read that about how God is in the driving seat. God makes the first move, as I said. Have a look in our Bibles. Just going to look through a couple of these verses from Exodus chapter 3. So we're back on page 59. So just look with me here at verse 2. So it's God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in flames of fire. God gets Moses' attention. Wouldn't you be amazed if you saw this? You would certainly get your attention. God gets Moses' attention. And in verse 4, God speaks to Moses. When the Lord said he'd gone over to look, God called to him from within the bush, "Moses, Moses." And then in verse 6, God kind of almost shows his CV. Do you know what a CV is? A curriculum vitae, kind of your what you've done in your life. It's kind of a mini version of that. Verse 6, then God said, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And that's kind of Bible, Old Testament language of saying, I'm the faithful God who's been with your ancestors and will be with you. So he says, looks at that. And then he says, can we see verse 7? He said he's concerned. The Lord said, "I've indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've heard them crying out because of their slave drivers, and I'm concerned about their suffering." Does God ever seem far off and distant and uninterested? Well, the Bible says he is concerned about our suffering. And verse 8, he promises to act. "I've come down to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them up to a land, a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The home of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, the Cellulites, they're all there." Thank you, Janet, for struggling through all these names that are a bit strange to us. But he says, I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring you into a good and spacious land. And if we just press pause on that at the moment, we've got Moses, this great leader we read about later on. What's he done in this account so far? All he's done is taken his shoes off, taken his sandals off, and he has, and he's hidden his face. So he's just stood there without his shoes on, hiding his face from God. He's probably at this point thinking, great, God has seen, God has spoken, God has promised. I can't wait. Maybe I'm going to get a ringside seat for this. I'm really looking forward to see how God is going to rescue his people. And then what does God say in verse 10? "So, go, I'm sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." This is a very big ask. Have you ever done that when you ask somebody, say, "I've got a big ask for you. Could you do this?" A big ask. It's the equivalent of me saying, "Ollie, would you mind just hopping on a plane, pop over to Washington, D.C., knock on the White House door, say hi to our orange friend and say, 'Excuse me, Mr. Trump, would you mind stop using oil and turning off the internet?'" That's what he was asking, to say, "Let my people go free." Pharaoh had a great deal going. The whole of the empire was fueled with slaves. So in saying, "Let my people go," he's saying, can we turn off all the economic power? It's that kind of thing. "Excuse me, Mr. Trump, stop using oil, turn off the internet." Don't think this is some trifling thing that went on years ago that doesn't really have any relevance. This is huge. So understandably, verse 11, Moses is reluctant. But Moses said to God, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" And God answers Moses with 5 glorious words. Can you put your hands up like this? Just put your palm up. I want you to remember these 5 words. If you remember nothing else this morning, it's these 5 words from verse 12. I will be with you. Can we say it together? I will be with you. And that makes all the difference in the world. So, Ollie, I booked your ticket, and God will be with you. But it makes a huge difference. And that promise is true to us today as we go into face all sorts of things that we think are perhaps insurmountable. So that's the first little thing. We've hovered over that. We're going to look forward a little bit now because it's not from our Bible reading that we read here, but a little bit further on in the account of Moses' life as God sends judgment. God sends judgment. Let me continue in the Jesus Storybook Bible as Moses went to Pharaoh. God says, "Let my people go." "Why should I?" Pharaoh said. "I don't want to." "I won't." So he didn't. So God gave Pharaoh 10 warnings called plagues. First, God turned the river Nile into blood. No one could drink the water, but Pharaoh would not let them go. So God made frogs coming hopping and leaping and jumping. In your bed frogs, in your hair frogs, in your soup frogs, all over everywhere frogs. "Make them go away," Pharaoh screamed. "Then your people can go." So God took the frogs away. But Pharaoh changed his mind. "You can't go," he said. Then God sent zillions of gnats. But still Pharaoh said no. So then God sent swarms of flies buzzing in your eyes, flies. And after that, sickness and horrible boils and huge hailstones and a storm of locusts. Then darkness when it should have been day, until it seemed the whole world, creation and everything, was coming undone, falling back into darkness and emptiness and nothingness. But each time Pharaoh said, "Make it stop, and then I'll let them go." And each time, when God made it stop, Pharaoh changed his mind and said, "Actually, no, you can't go." Finally, Moses warned Pharaoh, "Obey God, or he will have to send the worst thing of all." But Pharaoh just laughed. So God said, "The oldest boy in each family of Egypt must die, but my people will be safe." God told his people to take their best lamb, to kill it, and to put some of its blood on their front doors. Then when God passes over your house, Moses explained, God will see the blood and know that the lamb died instead of you. That night it was just as God said. Suddenly, piercing the darkness, echoing down the corridors of the palace, came a blood-curdling scream. Pharaoh's oldest son had died. At last, Pharaoh did just what God said. "Get out!" Pharaoh shouted. "Just go." So that very night, Moses and God's people fled out of Egypt and out of slavery. They were free at last. God sends judgment. We don't like to think about that, but he does. And he sent these things called plagues. Does anyone know, anyone ever seen this? Being faithful, God freed captive believers, hardening low-down Pharaoh. That helps us to remember what the plagues are. Do you know that? So I read that through pretty quickly. Can you remember some of the plagues? The first one, the river Nile turned to blood, and then there was frogs, and then there was gnats, and then flies, and then, a bit tricky, this is cattle, when everything died, and then boils, and then hail, well done, and then locusts, and then, no, turn the lights off, darkness, and then Passover. And that's how you can remember the plagues. But the plagues are a reminder that God is to be rightly feared. rightly respected, rightly revered. We sung at the beginning, praise to the Almighty, the King of creation. And in here it was like creation was being undone through these plagues in order to get Pharaoh's attention to let his people go. And what happens? God did make a way as we come to our final helicopter journey over. Pharaoh changed his mind again and pursued God's people to the Red Sea. Here we are. This is a very accurate drawing of exactly what happened. We've got Pharaoh's army pursuing them and the Red Sea before them. They needed help. How on earth were they going to get across? And at this point, I'd love it if we could have a little group of people that would be, they all seem to have gone. Children, I'm wondering whether you could come with me and to be God's people, because we do seem to have, you are the sea, by the way, folks. Come this way. Come this way. In fact, you can come as well, because there was people of all ages. Come on, Sam. Come on, Reese. In you come. Now, folks, I thought this is we're missing a trick if we don't do this. If you could all be the Red Sea, okay. And at this point, Matty, can you come over here and can you sort of join hands with Gwen? And then you'll have to join hands with Arthur, because we're going to have to, and I don't know whether you'll be able to reach across to dear Sylvia here. Just to hold your hands across there, because we'd like to open up this Red Sea.
She's got her armbands on.
She's still got her armbands on, we're okay. Right, so what's going to happen is, let me just read a little bit. Where do we get to? So the people get to the sea, and they did the only thing that was left to do. They panicked. We're going to die, they shrieked. Don't be afraid, Moses says. But there's nothing we can do, they screamed. God knows you can't do anything, Moses said. God will do it for you. Trust him and watch. But there's no way out, they cried. God will make a way, Moses said. And then the most amazing thing happened. God sent a strong east wind to blow all night long. Can you? Okay. It blew the water on the big sea. It blew to the left and to the right until it blew into two towering walls of water. Okay. So, oh, Arthur, you're brilliant. You're a towering wall of water. So, Hannah, you'll have to. Okay. Right through the middle of the sea, a muddy pathway opened up, and God's people walked across onto dry land. Go, head off that way. The sea was still going wild. Brilliant, thank you. And when the Egyptians tried to follow, the walls of water crashed back down. I'm afraid the budget doesn't extend to Egyptians. God's people were safe. They danced and laughed and sang and thanked God. Can you dance and laugh, folks? Yes, I can see that. Where there'd been no way, God had made a way. And many years later, once again, God was going to make a way where there was no way. Where there was no way. And this, as we've seen with the story of Moses, the story of Noah, the story of Moses points forward to Jesus. Points forward to Jesus. Because in Jesus, God makes the first move. Do you remember that, where God was always making the first move? He makes the first move. We see in the book of Romans that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. And then we saw that God sent judgment. And we deserve, you and I deserve punishment for our sin. But it's like all the punishment and the judgment and the plagues, as it were, fell on Jesus so that we might know freedom. And then God makes a way. As God made that miraculous way through the sea when it seemed all was lost and safety was on the other side, so the only way back to God is through Jesus. Moses is a type, he's a forerunner, a shadow of something to come which is seen in Jesus. So we remember Moses, we remember his fear, we remember some of the good things he did, but most of all it points to Jesus who brought that great rescue. And the next song we're going to sing is My Jesus, My Saviour. And I wonder whether you could say, my Jesus, my Saviour. Not just a Saviour out there, but one for you, one for me. A tower of refuge and strength.